hearing is now called to order at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, August 11th of 2021. This public hearing is being held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of the wetlands, as most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was originally published in the Advocate on July 8th of 2021. It was also posted in the town clerk's office. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. I need to let you know this is being broadcast live, and of course will be rebroadcast as well. All right. And we started doing this when we were doing things Zoom. Everybody here at this part of the table, our volunteers, are the commission, and that's our agent, Diane.
You actually need to say everyone's name.
Okay. So Ryan Resendes, Everett Phillip, Robert Rocha, Richard Pimentel, and Patrick Hammond, the agent. So we have three meeting minutes to we'll start with June 22nd of 2021. And this would be good to know who was
here.
So
Yeah, who was here or not, yeah. So, here's your June minutes.
Okay. All right, so
We have a quorum.
and everybody that was here on June 22nd is here
Is
now.
here. Okay, so you can approve those and sign
All
those.
right, and I think we've already looked these over before and said comments back, so if anybody would like to make a motion to
I'll move
approve.
that we accept the minutes of
June 22nd.
June 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
You folks want to sign them now? Or you want to sign them at the end?
We'll sign them at the end of the meeting.
Okay, yep. Here is July 7th.
And again, same with the folks that are here. So, take any motion to approve the minutes of July 7th as presented.
Move that we approve the minutes of July 7th, 2021 as submitted.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining, it's unanimous. And I will comment too that we have seen these prior to the meeting and have had a chance to comment. So we're not voting on these sight unseen.
And then July 14th, you don't have a quorum of
Okay.
members. Yeah, Heidi was on this one.
Okay, so
we can't do those tonight.
Can't vote on this, good, thank you. Meeting mail, something here that says Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program announces the availability of the 15th edition Natural Heritage Atlas, and that's effective August 1 of 2021. So I'm guessing you could, I don't know if there's a letter here, or if this is something that if people want to contact Natural Heritage and Endangered Species, they can order their own hard copy.
Just if anyone's familiar with the Natural Heritage Program, on their website, they have an interactive map. So that's basically to tell you they've upgraded the maps. They did remove some priority habitat in the state to allow for building and expansion in some areas. So there weren't any changes in our town. I went and looked. So everything remains the same for that.
And next we have into old business. This is a continuation of a public hearing. RDA for Ernest Addo, 4 Wilford Lane. A request for determination was filed by Ernest Addo for property located at 4 Wilford Lane, map 24, lot 23F. The applicant proposes to remove fill and construction debris from the buffer zone of the bordering vegetated wetland. Right now, Mr. Addo is not here, but I know our agent has the application.
Yeah, so first, there's 2 different files for this address.
Okay.
There's an enforcement order that was ratified by the commission back in March of 21. And the enforcement order required Mr. Addo to complete a notice of intent for the bordering vegetated wetland filling and to apply for an RDA to keep the patio. So I don't know if there's an error that the RDA that's filed, I think Mr. Addo thinks it covers all of it, but they're 2 separate instances, and you really can't do an RDA for the filling in the BVW. That is an impact. It is part of the Wetlands Protection Act. It requires a notice of intent. So I know Mr. Addo couldn't make it tonight, but I would ask that you make a positive determination for the filling at the property for the BVW and move ahead with the RDA for the patio. There's no harm in you approving the patio.
Right.
And I did receive some correspondence from the DEP that once we closed out the RDA, they may get involved in the enforcement side of the filling part.
Okay.
And I think we're gonna need their assistance, so.
That's the pretty one.
So here's here's the enforcement order requiring the notice of intent. And
This is NOI. So, is there anything new happened since our last meeting regarding this, or it's just a matter of
So-
the correspondence we received?
I did receive confirmation from Mr. Addo that he removed 2 loads of concrete rubble and disposed of it at Waste Management. He did bring in the weight slips, and that's all he's done. I really don't think that he realizes he needs to remove the fill from the wetland area. And I think he thought that he just needed to take the surface stuff out,
Right.
and he would be done. And that just,
That isn't.
it doesn't work right.
That's not what was said, yeah.
So, I do have the RDA here. And in here, he did write, removing debris such as fallen trees, dead branches or leaves, removing stones and any foreign objects that were deposited in the area.
That's part of it.
That's part of it. That would require a notice of intent. So, we would check off the box that there's a positive determination and request them to file a notice of intent. And we can do that at the end of the meeting if you just want to vote to do that. So someone need to make a motion to make a positive determination that there is an effect on the wetlands and he needs to file a notice of intent.
And that, also that we approve the patio part of it.
And that you approve the patio under the idea, negative determination for the patio.
Right.
Yes.
It's all the same vote, or does it 2 separate votes?
2 separate votes.
2 separate votes, yeah.
All right, so we can do that now, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
So, if we need further discussion, we can do it after a motion is made. So I'll entertain a motion to issue a positive determination for the activity that's within the bordering vegetative wetland.
So moved.
Great, there, a second.
Be the filling activity.
The filling activity.
Second?
Do we have any further discussion on this?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That's unanimous. And a separate motion, do we have motion to give a negative determination for the construction of the patio?
So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in
One-
favor?
Could, Mr. Chairman, if we could ask that he provides an as-built plan of the patio,
Okay.
just so we have that in our file,
Sure.
and you know how big it is and how big it
Mhm.
stays.
Yeah, and I remember when we had a conversation with him previously, I did ask him for those dimensions.
Yeah, so,
Creates a paper trail.
Yeah.
Right, so we have a motion and a second for negative determination of the patio. We'll add that, and as-built plan for the patio be provided to the commission.
So moved.
All right, so we have, so all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, that's unanimous. Related to that topic, we have a letter from the abutter. This is dated August 6th. May concern on the abutter to 4 Wilford Lane, and requesting that the soil and water be tested for contaminants so that we can be sure what we grow, we can eat safely and not get sick from the waste in the ground at 4 Wilford Lane. Every load that is taken out of the ground should be tested for contaminants, and if any contaminants are found, all abutters should be notified about the results. I would appreciate your cooperation in this matter, and this is from Barry Monroe. So this seems to relate to the other,
to the fill area.
the fill area, but also to whatever investigations Board of Health is doing, or not?
So this is what will happen. Once he files a notice of intent and goes to remove the material,
Mhm.
he'll have to hire a licensed site professional.
Right.
And they will go in and evaluate the
Mhm.
fill material.
Mhm.
And they can determine the frequency of how many yards will be representative. So whether they test every 100 yards, 200 yards, 500 yards, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then it can be disposed of.
Right.
But no one's gonna take it without some tests being done.
Right.
So his concerns will be
Yeah.
addressed there. And based on the test results that come back from the soil,
Mhm.
there'll be determination whether or not you need to test the groundwater.
Right.
And that's it.
So that's something, yeah.
That's gonna happen as a
anybody
matter of
that
course.
would have been removed in the fill would want to test anyway.
Correct.
Yeah. CYA.
Well, to take it out of landfill, that's what the regulations require.
Yeah.
Who would pay for the testing?
Mr. Addo would have to pay for it.
Property owner, yeah.
So I figured,
And that's why you should get the person that delivered it involved.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else about this property we should know or discuss?
He dropped a letter off that he doesn't want me to go buy his property. He doesn't have that liberty. You know, we're the Conservation Commission, it is a public road, I confirmed that with DPW.
Okay.
He just doesn't want someone going by that is checking on what's happening and making sure it gets done.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but, you know, that's the job we have to do.
Yeah, and if it's a public road and there's no.
I'm not going on his property.
Right.
Once there's a notice of intent in place under the Wetlands Protection Act, we do have the right to
Right.
access this property at normal hours.
Mm-hmm.
We can't show up on 2 o'clock in the morning when it's due alcohol, but, and I think that once the notice of intent is in play, DEP will probably pick up the enforcement on this.
Okay.
I did get a communication from the circuit rider that
Right.
once the IDA was resolved, they would get involved in this.
Okay, there are no new filings, so on to discussion. We'll start with 21.
Close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So, motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. There is no new business, so there's no new hearings. Discussion, 21 Evergreen Drive. So property owners are here. Have you heard from your engineer? Anything new happening?
Actually, I've been out there a few
Okay.
times. I've got some information for you. I went through this, I met with Mr. Fernandez out at the site a couple of times, and the first thing I did was ask him to put a siltation sock up
Okay.
across the isolated wetland there. I went through the file, I looked at the plans that were provided. It is an ILSF,
Mhm.
and there's a question as to whether or not there was more than 10,000 square feet.
Mhm.
The plan that was provided to Mr. Fernandez actually shows his patio going into the isolated land subject to flooding, right over the wetland, you know, insignias. And I looked at where the vernal pool is supposed to be, and I did a lot of research into vernal pools,
Mhm.
a lot. In fact, I built a PowerPoint presentation to give you folks, because it's really, really, really hard to certify a vernal pool. And there's only 2 weeks out of the year it can be done.
Yeah, I've certified 3 of them.
Yeah. We don't seem to have any in Acushnet according to.
I certified them in New Bedford, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
because all around us, every town around us has an unbelievable amount of certified vernal pools. We probably have 12 potential vernal pools, but none of them have been certified.
Okay.
So, in looking at this and reading the RDA, you can't give somebody permission to relocate a vernal pool. That just can't be done. The vernal pool is the holy grail of the Wetlands Protection Act. And my own look at it, I had doubts as to whether or not it could really be certified to the standards that Natural Heritage Endangered Species requires. I read your notes,
Mhm.
and you've done it before, but you would have had to have seen hundreds of salamanders, and a certain kind of salamander.
Yeah, the spotted.
Yeah, and an egg mass,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the size of a trash barrel cover. And I don't know if you did that.
It wasn't that large, no.
Yeah, and it was in June. And so you missed the window of what would have been the late March opportunity. I've got my doubts, I think it's a tough burden for the property owner. I talked to them about leaving that alone, putting the erosion control in place, seeding the area that's exposed with a pollinator mix or a conservation mix, and staying out of that area. And I think that's the best way to resolve it for the property owner. I spoke to them twice. It's been extremely stressful for them. They built a beautiful house and made a very nice investment in the town of Acushnet, and I just think it would be the right thing to do to resolve it. They did cut some bushes down in the water area. It's going to come back, and they do have an off-site drain from the neighbor, a 6-inch pipe that's directing his stormwater down into that area. And that's adding to the flooding. That's compounding the problem a little bit. And he has brought his perimeter drains down by there too. So he's agreed to have a no-touch zone for that whole area, stabilize it, and move on from there. And it would be my recommendation that we do that, because the vernal pool can't be moved.
My question would be, so the area closer to the house, there was a little fill in there, so there's a little bit of that ILSF was lost, and the proposal from Mr. Costco was to replace it on the other end. Do we still want to maintain that same amount of square footage of that isolated land subject to flooding?
I looked at all the historical photos, and that area was disturbed quite a bit before, and there's a path on the right-hand side, like an ATV trail that goes out back. That's been like that historically for quite some time. The area is trapped. The water would have to go uphill to get to the house to his right, where there is a wetland system, and it was identified. So there's no connection there. And I believe that most of the runoff is between him and his neighbor from their roof drains. That's really the only solution to that.
Did the letter from the neighbor make it into the file? Because I remember I saw letters saying
It did.
there's only one thing draining out of that pipe. I don't remember the details on that.
I'm going to be sending him a letter on behalf of the Stormwater Board,
Okay.
telling him to take that pipe out.
I was gonna ask what's gonna happen with the pipe.
Yeah, that's not fair that
No, right.
he's dumping his stormwater into their yard.
Right.
He needs to manage it on his own property.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Just like everybody else does.
yep. So, I would ask that we get a plan from Mr. Fernandez to finalize that and
Okay.
show what's going to be stabilized and what's going to remain, and have a no-touch zone and record it at the Registry of Deeds. And that'll be the end of it. And there'll be no, whoever the successor is or whatever happens, it's on record, there's a paper trail. And we need to build paper trails for all of these things. We've got a lot of stuff out there with no paper trails.
So would this be plans coming from Mr. Costco? Is this,
Yeah, I think Mr. Koska's back in action. He was in, his father was sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is that something you can do?
Yeah, I can call him and have him do that.
Yeah.
yeah, that way it's on an engineered plan, it's all typed up and,
He won't need to do any work. It's all in a can for him. He's got all of his shots and grades and all of that. He just needs to modify a plan and stamp it,
Okay.
and then record it at the Registry of Deeds with some conditions from the commission.
Okay.
And we could do that at our next meeting. You folks wouldn't need to come back other than to get the plan to me.
Okay.
Sound good?
yeah. That works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. So you need to make a motion to do that.
All right, so we'll entertain a motion that at our next meeting, we'll expect to be in, we'll make a motion to accept revised plans from the engineer for 21 Evergreen Drive, and those plans will include a notation of where the no-touch zone will be.
Existing conditions and a defined no-touch zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all in
Sounds
favor?
like a good plan to
It
me.
does, yeah. Sounds like a really good plan, yeah.
No less digging that it'll fix things, because sometimes that just makes it worse.
I talked to the town administrator and I said, there's a lot up in the air there, and we should resolve it to the benefit of the property owner, rather than try and force a Wetlands Protection Act down their throat and have them spend $10,000 trying to do something that can't be achieved. And hearing the level of distress that they had, they were very concerned about this. They didn't take it lightly.
I know.
Yeah, so, and they built a beautiful house over
Yeah,
there.
they did.
Yeah.
Sue and I have had a few pleasant conversations.
I'm sorry, thank you though.
No.
I mean,
Right, so let us vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstaining? No, that's unanimous. So get that to us, we can vote on it in a couple of weeks. We'll vote to accept the plans that are presented to us. Thank you.
You're all set?
Thank you.
And you don't have to stay for the rest of this.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Have a good night.
Next, we have 88 Wing Lane, potential drainage issue. I know you've been out there a couple, probably.
I've been there twice, and I got access the second time.
Okay.
They blew me off for the first meeting, and there's some serious problems out there. It really shouldn't have been an RDA. They were allowed to deviate quite a bit there because of a lack of conditions. And groundwater is at the surface. There are panels out there that are sitting in groundwater. There's water under the panels. The basin that they built, I don't believe went through a stormwater review, got a stormwater permit, any of those things. Yeah, the planning board since 2007 wasn't peer reviewing stormwater reports and requiring stormwater permits. They didn't realize it was in their bylaw. And when I got on board and read the bylaw, it said that you need the stormwater management plan and that it shall be peer reviewed. It needed to go to an engineer. No one on the planning board has the expertise to go through stormwater calculations and all of those things. So that didn't get peer reviewed. I don't know how a basin is going to infiltrate anything that's lower than groundwater. So they couldn't get it to drain, so they dug a trench from the basin right into the wetland. So that's untreated stormwater. It's not being held for any time. It's called a short circuit. It's short circuiting the device that's supposed to slow it down and make it settle. And while I was there was a bald eagle catching a frog and taking off. Yes, sitting right on the telephone pole. Doug came with me, the new planner. They also took all of the boulders from the site and dumped them over the silt fence into the wetland. Another just. So I called the engineer and talked to him, and it's also priority habitat. And I asked him if he had anything from natural heritage and endangered species, and he said, "What's that?" So I knew I was in trouble right there. Someone called me from the parent company that's actually the proponent.
The French folks.
Yeah.
Because he called me on my cell phone while I was at work. I had a hard time when I saw this foreign phone number show up.
Yeah.
This is probably not spam. So,
Yeah. So they did come to the office Monday, and we're setting up a meeting for their engineer to come over who does know what they're doing and figure out what the conditions were from natural heritage, what they're gonna do about their basin. They're gonna need a stormwater permit. And under the stormwater regulation, and we didn't know this either, the town requires a financial assurance for the operation and maintenance of all of the stormwater controls in these projects for 20 years. And that's a significant amount of
This
money.
is any
basin.
solar,
Yeah. Not just solar.
anything with
Any stormwater basin and BMPs requires a 20-year O&M plan and financial assurance, including the possible replacement of the basin.
Right.
So I called Kathy, the treasurer, and said, "How many financial assurances do we have for all the basins in town?" And she said, "We don't have any." And then we did a quick look at all of the solar fields. There's 5 that have been built, and the town's not in possession of any financial assurance for any of those projects. These things just slip through the cracks. So Doug's fallen up in all of that. They're gonna have to come up with something over there. I don't know, what they're gonna do. They did it as an RDA and said there wasn't gonna be any land disturbance. But I was doing inspections for Keating as they were doing that job.
Mhm.
And they grubbed that whole site. I mean, there was a lot of vegetation there. They did disturb the whole site. But I asked them if he realized that their panels were in groundwater, and they said, yeah, we don't.
Hmm.
So we'll have to see what your engineer
Yeah.
communicates next week and get him to submit a stormwater management plan.
Mhm.
And see what they have to do. But what they did is not acceptable.
Hmm. Thanks for following up on that.
Well, that's the job. So there may be a violation notice going up there. Well, there will be for the stones in the wetlands.
Oh,
and that.
In that trench?
Yeah, I kind of chuckled.
Yeah, that was the first time I visited that site, was when we went out there and I knew it wasn't right. I mean,
Yeah,
it was a
No,
hand-
if-
hand-dug trench, and it was a direct line,
yeah, and that trench is down into groundwater too.
right.
So, yeah,
I haven't seen it.
Oh.
I was led to believe it was just a little cutout in the top of the wall of the basin.
Yeah, that's what they presented to us too, that's.
Yeah, it's
Steep.
defeated the basin,
Yeah.
and it's just going straight into the wetland. So,
That'll be fun to see.
it'll be interesting.
Mhm.
The Board of Health doesn't allow wet basins because of mosquitoes. Your basin has to drain in 72 hours. And I also discovered in the wetlands regulation that we don't allow basins in Class D soils, where it's mostly clay.
Right.
We don't allow any basins. And I'd say that 3 of the recent solar fields approved with basins are in D soils. So I have to follow up with those people and give them the news that they need financial assurance for all their BMPs, or O&M plans, and all of this. But it also turns out that the last 6 solar fields have been built on spec.
Mhm.
They don't have connections with the power company, they don't have agreements to hook up. And I got a call from the owner of the property at 1052 Main telling me that Nexamp had just called and asked for a 10-year extension on their agreement, to have 10 years to build the solar field.
Mm.
And he said, I'm gonna be dead in 10 years, why did they do this? So at the department head meeting yesterday, I suggested a change to the bylaw for large-scale solar fields, that to apply for a permit, you have to have either a letter of intent from the power company
Mhm.
or a contract for a connection. Because a lot of town resources we use to permit those and get those all done,
Mhm.
and they may not be built.
Yeah.
So we lost money on that.
Right.
And that's not the way it should work.
Because there was a solar field proposed for the driving range on Main Street across from the Townie, and it's still a driving range.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been kicking around, but they can't get a connection. And the power company is in the solar business too,
Mhm.
and they're outbidding projects against these people, and they're saving connections for themselves.
Hmm.
So it's very hard to get a connection. But in the world of business development, to spend $100,000 to make a couple of $1 million is a reasonable investment. And if you hit 2 out of 5, you did okay.
Hmm.
So I think changing the bylaw will, they wanted to have a moratorium on solar fields. And they're only good for a year.
Mhm.
So Pam said she'd be glad to have that changed to the
Oh, yeah.
bylaw. So we're gonna do that for fall town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Next on here, discussion on use of buffer zone.
Yeah. We have a real problem with how lax some of these buffer zone approvals have been. If you get a chance, go by Labonte Street and look at number 6 Labonte, the last house that's up and built.
Okay.
The back of that house is less than 10 feet.
I went and looked at it the other day.
Yeah, it should have never, it's 10 feet from the replicated wetland. It's not gonna make it. And when I went out, I saw it and it was a mess. And I called the wetland engineer and said, I'm out here looking at your wetlands replication. He said, yes, it's all done. And I said, you're scaring me now because it's not all done. And in fact, what you took out looks better than what you replicated. If this is it, you should have just left it alone. And when he came out, the replication wasn't in the area that was on the plans. And I asked what happened, and he told me that there was a change in the field with the conservation agent, and that there was an approval made in the field. And I said, well, I can't find anything in the file. So I have to go by the replication plan that was approved by the commission. And I explained a few more things to him, and then the lender's attorney, the bank's attorney, called and had some concerns about a COC for the closing. So I mentioned my concerns to him. He said, can you meet me there? So the next morning, there was a meeting of the realtor, the buyer, the seller. John Romanelli was there, the wetland scientist was there, the site contractor was there, Josh Aruda. And I explained that something was approved, you need to do what was approved. And they explained to me the change in the field, and what they tried to tell me was that when the original seller who built the road picked that replication area, they didn't go look at it, they just said on a plan, this is where the replication area is going to be. But it's all ledge, and it couldn't be done. So they decided to shift it all right up against the back of the property line, of the back of the house. So it's about 10 feet from the deck, maybe 6 feet from the deck. And it's all downhill. All the water from the back of the lot's going right into the wetland replication area. And they had a pile of very sandy loam that they were going to use. And it's supposed to be 10 trees planted and 10 plants planted. And they planted a Charlie Brown maple that had maybe 3 leaves on it, and a blueberry bush. And so I explained to him that that's not acceptable. You need to do what's in the plan. And we all met, and we talked about it, and I said, there's nothing I can do about the fact that you couldn't build it where the person who sold you the property said it was going to be. And that's part of the problem, is they bought someone else's approval. Meaning Gaspar bought it off of the first person. And I don't know that any change was made in the field. So I told John Romanelli to give us a new plan of what that change was that was approved by the agent. And that he would certify that it was done in that area. And that'll go in the file so that we have a piece of paper for a paper trail, that we didn't give somebody a break or do something silly. We worked it out in the field. And I made him install his erosion controls. The silt fence wasn't installed properly. It's still not installed properly. He hasn't responded to that. I emailed Manny Gaspar directly today, letting him know his site contractor hasn't fixed that. I asked him for the specs on the soil they were going to use, because the area they filled for the road, the wetland they filled, was going to be the soil bank for the replication. The soil's supposed to come from the same watershed, but they didn't do that. They didn't save any of the soil. They didn't save any of the soil of when they scarred out the replication area. And the contractor said, well, I couldn't do it. And that's a big excuse. People always tell me I had to do that. I had to cut those trees down. So I said, do you have a copy of the notice of intent? I've never seen it. Well, it's supposed to be here. You're supposed to have it. Have you seen the replication plan? No, I've never seen it. How did you do a replication without having the plan? And he told me that the engineer was there. I doubt that the engineer was there, or it wouldn't have looked the way it looked. So when we went for the meeting, the engineer brought a bag of some very organic soil. And I asked him for the analysis on it, because the replication plan should have given the percentage of organics and the percentage of minerals to be in that soil. And he said, I don't know if they have one. I'm not sure. It was from Sam White Company. I'm familiar with Sam White Company. They had one load of that material delivered, and they covered the rest of it with the silty sand, with the silty loam. And we're going to see if anything grows there. They've got 3 years to do it. We don't have to sign off on it for 3 years. The bank is holding back money from the sale, just in case something has to be done. The homeowner was there. He was a nice guy. He understands that his house is in all buffer zone. And that's the reason that we need to tighten up the buffer zone. Most conservation commissions protect the 25-foot buffer zone.
And that's what we typically ask for.
Yeah.
I'm seeing stuff right up against the wetlands everywhere.
Well, it's not supposed to be that way.
I know. And I can't find much of a paper trail for things. And a lot of things seem to have been done as RDAs. And I had gone through the information and thought that you only had like 10 or 15 NOIs a year.
Mhm.
But then I started looking at these RDAs, and they really were potential NOIs.
Okay.
And the commission did a whole bunch of RDAs. DEP, we have no way of knowing that people who file an RDA have sent that RDA to DEP. And I would recommend that we get a copy from the people and we mail it to DEP.
Yes, sir.
Because DEP does make comments
Mhm.
on the RDAs and NOIs.
Right.
And there were a lot of comments on the solar fields from DEP, and I don't think that those comments got back to the commission. Because there were numerous comments about making the arrays smaller, not cutting trees down, pushing them back from the buffer zone. And all these solar arrays are in the buffer zone, cutting the trees down and taking the stumps
I
out.
haven't seen any of those.
I know.
Hmm.
And same thing where stormwater is being approved by the planning board while conservation is, doing a notice of intent, and then they're out of sync.
Hmm.
And leading up to my next thing, the planning board is the stormwater authority under the stormwater bylaw. They have the ability to assign that authority to anybody they want to.
Right.
And I don't know if you want to do it, but it would be a good idea for the Conservation Commission to become the stormwater authority. So that as you're approving your notices of intent, you're approving the stormwater plan all at the same time. And you're getting the peer review, the benefit of the peer review and all of that, all at the same time. And things will tighten up, pretty quickly there.
Right.
The planning board only meets once a month.
Oh,
You folks meet twice a month,
Mhm.
and that stuff would move along much faster.
right.
The planning board was having proponents arrange for their own peer review and pay their own bills. That's not how it works. It needs to go through the 53G account. The person gives a deposit to the town, the peer review gets done, whatever is used goes back to them. If there's more money needed, they drop off another check. But I know I don't have the expertise that a professional engineer has to look at everything on a plan and get to the level of detail that these peer review guys do. I used to be amazed at the comments from our peer review on conservation in Uxbridge.
Mhm.
Really, really, really good comments. And there were peer review comments for stormwater and other things for some of these projects, and they didn't get back to the boards. And everybody got what they wanted. So if you want to consider, letting them give you Mark's fine with it, by the way.
Okay.
I think it fits this shoe much better than it does the planning board.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but clearly we need to have more stormwater reviews with these plans that are coming in. And, we've got the bylaws that say peer review,
Yep.
here's the payment process, and that there's no burden on us to do any of the actual review of the plans.
Yep.
But we get to assess what those comments are.
If you went on Oliver, the Oliver GIS,
Mhm.
and zoomed out on the town of Acushnet, I was amazed at how many wetlands there are and how many resource areas. This town is one big resource area.
Yeah.
You've got very high groundwater through the whole town. And a lot of these projects just aren't, suitable for that. And if you want to preserve the character of the town, and it's a beautiful town, you've got some really nice land, it needs to tighten up a little bit. And we need that paper trail.
Right.
Yeah. So, I've started taking out 2 NOIs a day out of a file.
Mhm.
Another problem we have is no one's been required to put up a DEP number, a file number sign at their projects. As you drive around
Yeah,
town,
yeah.
They're up randomly.
Yeah.
it's the first thing that goes up, and it's there when the erosion control inspection is done.
Mhm.
Because you have no way of spotting this stuff after the fact other than that
Mhm.
DEP file number hanging up. And when someone calls to complain, or even better, they won't call and complain if they see the file number hanging on a tree, they know they applied.
Mhm.
Or if they see a problem, they can call and say, I've got a problem with 001, 550,
Mhm.
and you can grab the NOI. Otherwise, it's a file search,
Mhm.
trying to find what's going on.
Yeah, I like that idea. Anybody else has any thoughts on it?
And, yeah, any other examples in terms of the issues in buffer zone other than Labonte?
All of them. Pico
Really?
Stone, what got approved over at Middle Road? Oh my God.
How is the house near Pico Stone, the middle road that we looked at, still being built right now? What about that one? That one I think was a concern in the beginning because of how close it is.
Next to,
Right, yeah.
Catino.
Yeah.
Just before Catino's driveway?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no file number hanging on the tree. so
No,
I
there
have
never
no-
has been.
I have no way of knowing.
I live right here. There never has been. that
So
I'm
they
aware
didn't
of.
do a filing?
They did. It's-
No, they did.
Okay.
They did do a filing, but,
But see, that's what's hard for an agent.
yeah.
I'm driving down Peckham Road and I see something going on that, even Joe was saying, you gotta get on Peckham Road, you gotta, this is unbelievable. And I drive by and I don't see a file number, I don't see anything. I go back and I look on Oliver, but Oliver's not always accurate. Oliver doesn't show any wetlands, but driving by, it sure looks like, there's some wetlands areas there. And other people have built in priority habitat without getting, any waivers from natural heritage. So it would benefit us as the wetlands protection people to be able to drive down the street and see a file number on a tree and know that there's a project there, and you can stop and do an inspection. But I'm new. I've gone on we have an Excel spreadsheet of all of the NOIs, but I don't know what stage they're in, whether they've started, they're finished. We've got some 10-year-old projects that didn't get COCs. Josh Arruda on Peckham Road, his big project there, he's out of compliance on his COCs and other things. That's one of my next stops. So I'm looking at 2 NOIs, starting with the newest ones,
Mhm.
to see if they've even started,
Yeah.
and just working my way through the file drawer. And it'll be 10 a week, and in 3 or 4 weeks, I'll have knocked off probably 2 years worth of stuff.
And you said you will be getting new computers soon?
So we are getting new computers supposedly this week. And what I want to do is I'm going to put Dropbox on the new computer, and I'm going to build a file for every IDA and every notice of intent. And you folks will be able to go on Dropbox and look at it. And you'll be able to see everything that's going on. You'll see enforcement, you see all that stuff every week of what's going on. And that's how we did it. We didn't want to drive to town hall and get our package every week for the conservation meeting and get copies of plans and all of that, because most of the guys didn't read it. And when you get that 600-page book from National Grid, they hope you don't read it, but some of us do. And you'd be amazed what's in, page 350 buried in the middle of the book.
Mhm.
So it'd be very helpful for you to be as informed as I am. It would be really good, and I think you'd be a little more engaged, and you'd enjoy it a little bit more. You're doing something.
Mhm.
And when you see something, you'll have the confidence to stop and say, I'm from the Conservation Commission, I don't think you should do this.
Mhm.
I'll have you talk to the agent, or you'll give them a stop work order right there on the spot,
Mhm.
and then ratify it. And that's what we did. Our guys had the ability to go out, and we would go out on Saturdays and drive around for 2 or 3 hours. We'd go out in rainstorms, really heavy rainstorms, and go check on the problem jobs that we knew we approved, and we knew they promised us that this wasn't gonna happen, but you've got to go out there and get that story. I had to do it.
Mhm.
And we've got one coming up on Hathaway Road. I was there today and I was there last week. It used to be a farm. They had goats and things. It's all wetlands. And I found something on Marilee's computer today from 2009, a letter she wrote to them telling them that it was a wetland. And I had 2 neighbors calling me very upset that they're, working over there. And I stopped and met with the guy today, and he was in denial of what was wrong. And he told me that he's hired an engineer and he's paid the engineer. I said, well, then great, just have the engineer file that application. You paid the money to file the application. So we'll see if he does. I told him to stop working. I didn't give him anything in writing. I took him at his word. And I'm gonna keep an eye on it
Mhm.
for the next couple of weeks and see what happens.
Is that the place is back off the halfway?
Yeah,
Like, set back from the
yeah,
road?
back behind the houses. And
I remember going there.
On the north side of Hathaway? I'm trying, what?
if you were going down Hathaway Road from Town Hall,
Mm-hmm.
it's on the right. And it backs up to Tilly Way.
Okay.
The name is Birch with a U.
Right.
Yeah.
I recognize that.
What is he doing exactly?
He's cutting trees down in the wetlands.
Okay.
He's selling firewood up front from a box. He's cutting the trees down from the wetlands. There are some flags. I went in and walked it, but I disagree with the flags wholeheartedly. And it was explained to me by Joe from the Board of Health that he had looked at that years ago to buy it himself and realized that it was all wetlands. And what it was, because it was agricultural use, they were able to mow the grass and maintain it for their agricultural use. So it looks like a nice grassy backyard to someone's house, but it's all hydric soils. It is a wetland, and it's been a wetland forever. And now a younger Birch, he might be in his 30s, has the land, and he's gonna build a big house, and he started clearing land, and he's gonna fill it. So I stopped to tell him that he needed a stormwater permit, and that's when I found out he was gonna build a house. He said, well, I'm building a house here, and, Dave DeVignan is my engineer, and he's got plans, and I said, well, you need to call Dave DeVignan and tell him to apply for the permit.
Yeah.
So we'll see what's going on. Board of Health has really, really good records. And because Joe was an engineer in the area and he had an engineering company, he's got a very good historic knowledge of a lot of lots and a lot of lots that he didn't buy and why he didn't buy them. And I'm seeing those lots that weren't buildable 20 years ago somehow have become buildable now. And it's just, I think people got used to a little bit of relaxed things from the stormwater side, and an engineer will submit whatever they think they can get through. And we had an engineer in Uxbridge that represented most of the town, and he didn't know it, but everybody on the commission calls him the liar in chief. And we just couldn't believe anything that he said, and we would send it out for peer review, and you'd have a list this long from the peer review. It would get done right, and that's why I also believe in peer review for a lot of this stuff. You don't have the time, you don't have the expertise, and you learn a lot from that peer review. It's free training for us. So.
Okay. Good. Thanks for staying on this stuff.
Yeah. No, I enjoy it. I'm wired to do the job and do it right. I'm always doing research. I'm always Googling and looking at things and reading approvals. And, That's the only way to do it.
So back to the prospect of us taking on the stormwater review part of things.
Yep.
So I suppose we should vote on that.
Yeah.
So, I propose that the commission take on the role of stormwater review, knowing that we have the stormwater bylaw to back us up and that everything is going to get peer reviewed.
Yep.
What do you think? What do we vote? Or should we? have
Someone needs to make a
One of
motion.
them make a motion. I know
Yeah.
I can't. So somebody make a motion to my proposal that we take on the role of stormwater review.
I'll make a motion that the Conservation Commission takes on the stormwater review.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Good. Any further discussion? All in
No.
favor?
Aye.
I'm sure.
Okay.
The money's already coming out of your budget for stormwater, so
Hmm.
it's been budgeted into conservation, and the two just go together.
Yeah.
And it won't be any extra work. It doesn't require extra site visits or any of that
I
stuff.
guess we're going there anyway.
Yeah, it's just technical
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Yeah. And it'll certainly give us a better, being able to read the comments from the stormwater experts,
Yeah.
give us
Yes.
a better sense of
So
the
we'll have
plans
access to that.
For the
We'll have access to all
Yeah.
that.
It might be able to understand the hydrology better by
No, you will.
seeing it.
I've learned a lot just from the 6 reports I had to read for the solar fields. But I have to admit, I read yours, I read the stormwater bylaw and the stormwater regulation probably 10 times, and there's still things that jump out at me that somehow you don't catch it. I didn't catch the surety for the O&M plan until about a week ago.
Okay.
And it just, smacked me in the face. And it makes sense,
Mhm.
because that gets put to the town, and the town doesn't have the resources to maintain somebody else's stormwater and all of that. And this is an EPA requirement for our NS4 permit. We didn't do this stormwater stuff because we wanted to. These are things EPA is requiring of us to clean up our stormwater to the discharges to the rivers and bay and to groundwater. So it's their requirement for the O&M plans, because they don't want towns saying, we don't have any money, we're not gonna do it.
Mhm.
They want somebody on the hook for it, so.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item on here is agent updates. This sounded like the conversation we just had.
I think you just got it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have business for the commission?
No, just to touch on what he said though about going and checking out these sites that had NOIs, and I have no problem going to check out sites on a Saturday with you, but I think we should have like some sort of identification, so we can't just say, oh, I'm with conservation, people get that beat it, get it.
I'll bring my identification for the next meeting that we used. So we had an ID from the town that said we were conservation commissioners. And then you had a wetlands protection badge that was on the other side of it. And it says Uxbridge Wetlands Protection. And it's a badge, Commonwealth of Massachusetts badge. And when you walk into someone's property, and this is part of the enforcement manual, since we have our computers, you guys will all see that. We adopted the enforcement manual in Uxbridge. And we formed an enforcement team of commissioners, of 3 commissioners. So you don't have to you can't have 4 because you'd be talking business and it would be a quorum. But to have 3 people that wanted to do it and go out on a somewhat regular basis, for an hour on a Saturday morning or out in a rainstorm to look at a project. And they report back to the commission on what they saw, so that everybody doesn't have to be involved in it. And you can even do it on a rotating basis, and get everybody up to date on that. It works really well. And we used to go out, Saturday, if it was raining on a Sunday afternoon, my buddy Jeff, let's go out. Let's go to Mountain View Road and see what's going on here. And sometimes you just shake your head.
Right.
So
I remember way back when we all got baseball caps. Were you on for that ever? So I'm
That was before me.
I might be the only one.
the enforcement manual recommends that you have a badge,
Mhm.
because it sets people back a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, there was one incident when we went, the 2 houses on Hathaway Road, but then the water, the yards were washing out between the 2.
Yeah, and
The first guy was fine.
Yeah.
Then we went over through the backyard into the next backyard. The guy came out. He was all crazy. Remember that guy? He wanted to, apparently, I guess, had some kind of identification.
Mhm.
See, my ID just says staff,
Mhm.
and that doesn't mean much to somebody. I could be the
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
secretary.
Anybody.
Yeah.
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 That's where, that was one instance where it was kind of uncomfortable at first.
Well,
Guy
people
comes
don't know who
charging
you are,
out of his
walking up
house
and
at
ringing
you.
their doorbell.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
We didn't have any IDs when I first started, and I went to the town manager and said, look, we're gonna get shot, we're gonna get arrested, something, just,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I know if somebody came in my yard checking out my property,
Yeah,
they'd
right,
probably
yeah.
be shot,
I don't even like anybody ringing my doorbell.
Right.
Those days are over.
Mm.
Back in the day, you didn't
Yeah,
have
right.
anybody,
Yeah.
but now it's like,
Mhm.
so,
Right.
but we can get there.
Unless it's FedEx.
But that is a good idea. It'll take you can't be everywhere at once, you know what I mean?
But you'll remember projects that you
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, we
that
drive
were
by
like-
all the time.
Well, that's the thing, 90% of the time,
Yeah.
we approve these projects and we don't hear any updates, and
Yeah.
we don't see anything about it
Yeah.
until they apply for a COC, you know what I
I
mean?
drive by these all the time.
And once they know that you might come by, things get a lot better. 2 days after the Labonte Street meeting, Joe got a hold of me and said, the word's out. you know, and they wrote a nice letter that they were happy with how that was handled. And it could have been handled a lot worse.
Joanne
Yeah.
showed me the letter. So,
Yeah. But once again, better to resolve it to the benefit of the property owners and just make it one for, remember that.
Yep. Reasonable resolution.
And as for the DEP signs, what, I mean, I know you need them, and, I mean, we all know you need them, but where's the teeth in enforcing that,
Yeah.
like?
On the startup. So when we issue a notice of intent, one of our standard conditions, and we had a whole page of special conditions for our Conservation Commission, and I haven't been able to find any for you, for your commission. And you have another sheet of special conditions for your DEP, regular order of conditions, where you have a kickoff meeting with the agent before you start work.
Mhm.
You have a erosion control inspection before you start work with the agent, and that's where's your sign, erosion controls, is your notice of intent on the job? No. We used to ask people to put a mailbox.
Mhm.
Just put a mailbox on the job and stick all your paperwork in. If you want to put a trash bag over it to keep
Oh,
it
yeah,
dry.
yeah.
fine.
Right, or one of those boards with the clear plastic over
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Most
And-
big job sites
and,
have
you know,
that.
where's your replication plan, where's all of these things, and that way,
Mhm.
no one can say, I didn't know.
Mm.
And that's the big thing, is, I didn't know, I had to do that, I had to do that.
Mhm.
And then, not letting consultants make you doubt yourself.
Mm.
They're very good, and I used to kind of feel like I was starting to doubt myself when a consultant told me I was wrong. And I would have to hold my ground until I could get home and verify whether I was really wrong or not. But you can't let them doubt yourself. And it happened at PJ Keating with that basin out front
Yeah.
that was on the A&R plan, excuse me, the ANRAD,
Right.
showing it was a wetland. And they said that was a mistake, that it's not a wetland. In purging documents in the Conservation Commission office, and I don't know why, but a plan popped out of a stack of old plans that big from 1987.
Mhm.
Tilcon Capaldi,
Yep.
plan of remaining land, and Basin 1C says pond.
Mm.
It was a pond, it is a wetland, and it's illegal to discharge stormwater to a resource area. And now in getting into the stormwater stuff, it turns out that they're actually discharging to our MS4. And they're gonna have to get a stormwater permit to discharge to our MS4. The unnamed tributary doesn't start until the other side of the bridge.
Okay.
We own the stormwater system between Keating and that unnamed tributary. I talked to EPA about it, and they're in tune with that.
Mm.
So we're gonna see where that goes.
Right.
It's just the more you read, the more you find out, and the more you unravel. And Keating has been very good at making all of our boards and consultants doubt themselves. And I say they're the masters of delay.
Mhm.
And no one ever got to the back part of the quarry until I took the job. I was standing there with Merrill Lee, talking about the Wooded and Current, big study they did out there, and the town spent like $58,000 on it. And the last paragraph said they were in compliance with everything. And Brian Noble was the manager, and he wrote in red ink in big letters, "Really?" With a question mark. So I came to the same conclusion of really.
Mm.
And I was there with Merrill Lee on an inspection, and I said, Merrill Lee, we were out by the new asphalt plant in the front of the property.
Mm.
I said, Merrill Lee, when you came for all of those inspections, did you ever go back to the silt pile and all that stuff you said? She said, no, they told us there was nothing back there. So they never went back there. And they didn't want anybody to go back there because that's an age-old problem they've had.
Mm.
And they didn't want us back there, and we had to get a drone.
Mm.
We had a drone come in to actually, get that search warrant and get that information. So, so when we think we're right until we're convinced that we're wrong.
Works for me. Okay. Well, I think on that note, the only other business is to state that our next meeting is scheduled for August 25th.
And you do have an IDA in for that meeting.
Okay. All right, 6 p.m. August 25th. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 7 PM.